In today's video, I prune away years worth of rot, show you how to propagate rose cuttings, and take an unexpected detour from my garden plan after finding a plant with leafy gall. So grab a cup of tea and settle in. We're going to talk about how to handle it while I keep things growing.
Appalachian sunrise meets my skin.
These shasta daisies are looking a little stressed, but there's so much new growth around the outside and underneath all of the old growth. I thought this shasta daisy had been here for years, but I just looked in my garden notes and it says that I bought and planted it in the summer of 2024, and her name is Becky. I've never divided shasta daisies before, so I am being a little gentle in this first cut, but I quickly learned that it's rhizomatous, and each of the new rhizomes have uniform, healthy-looking roots. They easily break apart from each other, so you can either pull them to make individual new plants, or keep them as small clumps and have a larger cluster of blooms. To divide, I'm just holding back the old growth to separate it from the new growth. My cuts are always straight up and down, but as soon as I make a cut, I'll wiggle and jiggle the knife back and forth to loosen up the clump. This plant hasn't gotten any special treatment or fertilizer in the past 2 years, so I don't know why I'm acting like I can take credit for any of these new plants, but the rest of it looks like I haven't even touched it. So I grab a shovel and do what I can only describe as seesawing. I take the massive clump and find a patch of grass in the sun just like a cat and get to work. I'm not too precious with it. I can manage breaking some of it apart by hand, and other parts I use my knife to divide. I kind of just let the main clump tell me what my little clusters need to be, and most of them are mixed with new and old growth. And the remainder of today's video is just a lesson in very rotten trees and very rotten cats. And I heard the other day that you should use your, speak of the devil, that you should use your non-dominant hand for some tasks. This is another do as I say, not as I do situation. You should probably not use power tools above your head, especially one with a reciprocating blade on it. But in most cases, I am making at least 2 cuts, oftentimes 3. And my first cut is always an undercut. You can look this up. It's called the 3-cut method. And it's extremely beneficial, especially for medium to large size branches. But I am not an expert, and this is not a tutorial. I'm just giving this snowball tree a very long overdue haircut. And you'll see here in a minute just how long overdue this haircut is. Will I ever learn that if you don't make time for pruning, pruning takes time from you? I haven't pruned this snowball tree in years, and even though it's put out healthy looking snowballs, I have no other choice today but to perform major surgery. And you can see the top of this branch is beginning to rot, and below that rot, a fresh new bud has still emerged. But every day I put off the reality of this harsh prune being way overdue is another day that this tree suffers, and I don't want that. And if I'm being extremely candid, this thing was rotting so heavily that it stunk, and I had no idea that this is what stunk. I probably should have known, but now that I'm cutting this thing open, I know without a doubt that this is what I was smelling. And I will say that what Google says a rotting tree should smell like is not what I smell. Technically, this is a snowball bush, so I don't know if that makes a difference, but it does feel so nice to get all of this chopped up and into the yard waste container and hauled off so I can breathe fresh air, so my neighbors can breathe fresh air, and so this tree can begin its rehab. Sorry, tree, I love you. And unfortunately, I do think I'm also destroying an ant home, so I'm sorry, ants. I know you deserve a place in the world, but maybe you can find a new home that's not in a rotting tree. And the rot went so deep, so without digging this entire root system up, I just cut it all the way back and tried to get it as flat as possible so that there was nowhere that water could sit and make this thing rot even more. And as I'm editing this, we just hit 100 subscribers, so thank y'all so much for being here. I share all things home, garden, and DIY, and if you can't already tell from me sharing my stinky rotted tree with you, I will always keep it real. So if you're a person of many interests, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a video. It was not my intention to go this stubby, but in order to get all of the rot away, it had to be done. But if it doesn't recover from this, well, I guess I just have to go plant shopping. I think it's been at least 1 or 2 years since I've pruned this blueberry, so it is in definite need of a good haircut. And this year it did produce the most amount of blueberries that it ever had, but I did have to delicately shove a vertical trellis up against it because the fruit was so heavy it was weighing down the branches. And I knew I would regret not pruning it, so that's what I did. And my algorithm must have known that I didn't do a good enough job because I've been getting served how to prune blueberry bush videos nonstop. So after watching a couple, I came to do a second round of pruning. I took off any of the teeny tiny short canes that would touch the ground when loaded with fruit, removed most of the lower canes, and opened up the middle a little bit more. There has got to be some sort of saying like, teach a man to fish, but give a girl some bricks and she'll move them for the rest of her life. I truly do hope to have a use for them soon. Stay tuned. But for now, I'm finally moving this peony in this very tight corner. My back is literally up against a wall. Do not get me wrong. I love peonies in an arrangement in a vase, but in my yard, I'm not crazy about them, because if you do want to harvest them and put them in a vase, you got to do it before the bloom even opens up. Then you're just left with the foliage, which I do love the leaf shape, but it's never a lush green. It always is kind of speckled, kind of sketchy looking, and you're supposed to let it all die back so that the energy can go into the tuber for next year's growth. So I guess I'm just saying that if I didn't inherit these peonies, they came with the house, then they wouldn't be in my yard. Maybe you have better growing conditions and are good at peonies, and if that's the case, I'm just jealous. And this is the blueberry that I talked about in my garden planning video that had been in a nursery pot for far too long. I finally got it planted in the pitch black the other night after I moved the peonies from this spot. Thankfully, it wasn't root bound, and even though it is small, I'm applying the same pruning techniques here. Now on to prune my roses, which ideally is done in the middle of February, and I am pretty good about doing this every year. But this year I'm trying propagation for the first time. So any healthy stems that are a little bit thicker than a pencil, I'm cutting down to about 8 inches and placing into a glass of water. And I did come back out for a second round of pruning, and I'm so glad that I did, because there was plenty more that I needed to cut back, and I bet this much rot and this severe of a prune could be avoided if I pruned as hard as I truly need to every winter. And it is hard to cut all of the new leafy growth, especially in the middle of winter when not everything has woken up yet. But if I prune them back hard now, not only am I encouraging new vigorous growth this spring, but I'm also reducing the likelihood of diseases. And this is my Edith Darling rose, and she is an absolute monster. This is all new winter growth, if you can believe it. You can tell that I was being extremely particular on the first round of pruning this one, which is good for a regular pruning, but not so much for a winter hard prune. This is me as a stylist with a client in my chair with extremely fried hair who wants a trim to freshen things up, but is in complete denial that freshening things up is going to mean more than taking just an inch or two off. Except I'm the client and this rose bush is my hair. And you can see instantly my split ends run deep. It's not difficult to be in denial, especially if your rose bush is still putting out beautiful, healthy looking roses and stems. This year I'm finally facing the facts, and unfortunately it means giving Edith Darling a buzz cut. This might not be necessary, but it did make me feel a little bit better to put a chair over all of these open wounds so that they could be protected from the rain to properly heal. This is the pinky peach rose that I'd like to move over in between the other 2 roses, and for whatever reason, I happily give this one the proper chop every year, so it's not in too bad of shape. I did also collect cuttings from this one to propagate, which will hopefully be insurance that I won't need, and you know why I'm so nervous to transplant this one if you watch my last video. I did use rooting hormone on the neon orange and Edith Darling rose cuttings I took, but these pinky peach rose cuttings are not getting rooting hormone because it's inside, and I'm too lazy to go back in and get it. I'm just taking the healthy stems that are a little bit thicker than a pencil and trimming straight across underneath a node at the bottom, and then at the top cutting at an angle, pruning the fresh growth a little bit, and then sticking them in sand, which allows for proper drainage, because even though we're trying to encourage root growth, roses do not like to be wet. And I am going to leave them outside. This might be risky, but I don't have a greenhouse and I'm just going to leave them tucked underneath this table. I will keep my eye on them and hopefully we will get roots. These raised beds are prime real estate for me because they're closest to the patio and receive full sun with dappled afternoon shade. I have a lot of seeds from the different dahlias that I hand pollinated last year, and I want to pack them all in here so I can keep track of their genetics, but that means everything else in this bed has to go. And if you watched my garden planning video, you saw me clean out these beds so I could figure out what all was in here. And they're mostly perennials like different penstemons and a few different varieties of salvia. And there's also a handful of plants that I'm not super familiar with that I bought on clearance last summer. And I took inventory and planned exactly where everything was gonna go so that all I had to do was come in here and pluck everything out, put it in a tote bin, and take it to where I wanna plant it. And that place is the place that I call the back corner, which is currently where I'm keeping my wheelbarrow, but I did give it a new home and a new corner. Even though it's a bit of an odd spot, this space is deceivingly large, and I had previously never planted anything in this area because you can't see it from the patio and you can't really see it when you're inside either unless you're standing at the window. So it became the designated messy corner, which up until this point was fine, but I would like to build a greenhouse on the other side of the sidewalk, so I figured now is the perfect time for me to get some perennials established, and I figured what better perennials to get established than some that were already established in my raised beds. So that's what I did. I just brought the tote right over here and followed the plan. And like any of my projects, this was just the result of a domino effect. The rose that's to the right of this planting area is only there because it got effectively downgraded because it wasn't doing well and it's just not my favorite. But of course, now that it's in this back corner, you can see that it's absolutely splendid, which now reminds me I need to go and prune that. Anyway, as soon as I planted the rose, I knew that I needed to mulch it, but before I mulch it, I should probably go ahead and irrigate it. So I did that, and now we're here at this very unfortunate event. Watch me learn what leafy gall looks like in person. Totally gnarly, right? I immediately tossed that, got rid of all the soil that it touched, sanitized all of my tools, sanitized my gloves, and questioned all the other plants in the tote. And of course, it's the middle of winter, and these are all plants that I've never grown before, so I'm not confident in telling the difference between leafy gall and new winter growth. So I'm sharing close-ups of it all before running it directly to the garbage can. I was surprisingly calm during all of this. I think it's because it was so isolated and I luckily did catch it at this point, but I did go back with clean gloves, clean buckets, clean everything, and dig out and throw away all of the dirt and mulch and plants that were in the area that the leafy gall plant came from, sanitized everything again, and then did what any normal person would do, steal plants from other places. These were all the shasta daisies that I divided in the beginning of the video. Love that for me. We're going totally off plan. I threw away most of the plants in the plan. Now I'm just freestyling from back to front with shasta daisies and nodding onion and one borage that I found. And since I don't have enough plants to fill this space right now, I left the front open so I could easily pop a few seedlings in here this spring. Cause yeah, we're gonna be growing a lot from seed this spring and even more varieties than planned because throwing away all of those plants that I was counting on means that I have to go buy more seeds, right? I want this bed to be full of plants that can thrive on some neglect and be a little drought tolerant. So before you go, comment down below what your favorites are, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.